in that structure for so long and then being kind of snatched out of it is definitely an adjustment that not only I'm going through, but a lot of athletes, deal with.
Sure.
Obviously, with identity, the change in identity, all of that is definitely real. But it's been good. I have no regrets. I like this side of things.
Malcolm, you officially stepped away from the game in 2022, 13 years in the league. How has that transition been for you?
I'm not gonna lie, it's been a little difficult, but for good reasons. It's a lot of unknown, right? I played sports since I was 7 years old, and I've had all of that structure and organization. People telling me when to eat, when to go to meetings. Every year that August through December, you're going to be playing football, and all of that's kind of gone, and I'm having to piece that together on my own, and that's definitely been an adjustment. But it is one of those things where the open-endedness allows you to define what your days are going to look like, define
Mm-hmm.
your own goals, what you're aiming at. And so I've had to take a lot of the things and structure that I learned in football and apply it to life and almost structure my life like a football week.
Yeah, yeah.
And that's been helpful. It's because otherwise it's really chaos in that structure for so long and then being kind of snatched out of it is definitely an adjustment that not only I'm going through, but a lot of athletes, deal with.
Sure.
Obviously, with identity, the change in identity, all of that is definitely real. But it's been good. I have no regrets. I like this side of things. It's been
Well, I
fun.
mean, there's so, as we know, I mean, so much from sports is transferable to business, to life. And
Yeah.
you started thinking about that well before you hung it up, right, on the field. Tell me a
hmm
little bit about your portfolio, your business, your approach, how you've built it. All of the
Yeah.
stuff you have going on away from the field is incredible.
Well, it started, really out of necessity in because I watched, many athletes leave this game with nothing to their name. Even myself having to change teams, you start to realize that you can give everything you want to this game, but when the game is done with you, like you have to fend for yourself. And oftentimes trying to do that after your career is too late. And so luckily for me, I've had the opportunity to be surrounded with friends and family who have expertise. And my strategy was, how do I don't care I want to make money, but I don't care to make as much money as possible. I
Mm,
use money as a tool to set up the lifestyle that I want. And I want to have impact in my community, my family, and set the people I love up, for success. And so I started to build my business team with those people around me. My CFO, Rolanda Johnson, I've known literally since pre-K.
wow.
Her husband handles our operations. My manager turned into business partner, India Robinson, handles our media company, Listen Up Media. And so
Hmm.
I've just really just kind of built from, again, the skill set that was available to me. And we've scaled that up now to having almost 20 quick service restaurants on the East Coast and getting ready to
Wow.
scale that some more. Got a production company, we got a fashion house or clothes company that we've had for 5 years. Invested into a Premier League team and Burnley Football Club. So we've gotten into so many things that because collectively we've kind of like been able to leverage each other. I've been able to poach them out of the corporate world and get us all to kind of collectively work for the benefit of ourselves. And that all of those things that I just laid out couldn't have been done on my own
Sure.
while I was playing ball. And so it
Sure.
was necessary to build it like that in order, for me to have the decision to be able to walk away from the game on my own
Hmm.
terms. And that's
Hmm.
really what I wanted. I didn't want the game to kick me out like I've seen it do so many of my peers. I wanted to
Yeah.
be able to walk away when I was ready.
Where do you think that came from? I mean, this is to me, as a former sports agent, remarkably refreshing to see because I always used to say athletes die twice, right? Once when they step away from the game, which
Yeah.
so many don't know how to do and when to do it. And then,
Yeah.
of course, when they go. But where did this thinking come from? And I have to just say how refreshing it is, Malcolm, to know it's not about money, it's about purpose,
hmm
and it's about that drives you. Again, so refreshing, but sometimes unique. Get me inside of that mindset that got you there.
Yeah, I think it's the way that I handle fear. And I talk about this in the book. That's really the
Hmm.
opening chapter of the book. Is like until you can deal with fear, that'll paralyze everything in your life. And when you look at athletes that stay in the game too long, or hit the ground and they don't really know what to do, a lot of it is the fear of starting over, the fear of believing that they are more than just an athlete. Even though
Mm-hmm.
it's a mantra now and we throw it around almost as a cliche, it still is one of those things where you've never had an internship, you've never really had a job.
Sure.
This is the one thing you've been good at, and the world recognizes you for it. And now you have to begin to think about how to be good at something else. That is a very frightening thing to do. So the logical thing to do is to start that early, right?
Yeah.
To build up some of those skills so that when you are ready to either get kicked out of the game or leave the game, you don't leave feeling like you're a white belt, at the
Mm-hmm.
world. You have
Mm-hmm.
something to stand on. And really that's been my approach. That came from, just being solution oriented. I'm a guy who looks at problems, analyzes them, and then comes up with solutions of my own.
Mm-hmm.
And I didn't want to be a statistic. And so if I didn't want to, I'd had to do something different. And lucky for me, I had like really good examples. So when I first came in the league, I was really good friends with Larry Fitzgerald. And he's
Mm-hmm.
somebody who networks like anybody, like
Yeah.
nobody I've ever seen.
Sure.
He's huge in the business world. He
Mm-hmm.
makes connections everywhere he goes. He has interests. He travels. He used to take the off seasons off, and
Mm-hmm.
he's a Hall of Fame caliber
Sure.
player. And
Stud.
he used to take those off seasons off. And I realized later in my career when I started to do that, that's where you develop these other skills. The time away from the game is
Mm.
just as important as the time you put into it, because it's not just about developing yourself as an athlete, because we all know that that's a very temporary part of our lives. It's about the constant development of ourselves,
Mm-hmm.
and that transitions even onto the field. When I learned more about business and traveled, I learned how to take that and influence how to be a better leader in the locker room, how to be a better
Mm-hmm.
player, how to think about strategy differently, how to even think about navigating the business of sports
Mm-hmm.
differently once I
Sure.
got around some other, in different ecosystems. So I think it's really important for young athletes or just people in general to make sure that they don't associate what they do with their purpose or as
Yeah.
their purpose, and they continually like try to learn in all of these other facets of life how they may have other talents or how they can learn from something over here, something in nature, something in business that they can apply to their family or their skill.
How do you think, Malcolm? I mean, to me, this is so awesome because I think so often people identify with achievement. They identify with the way the world might see them or what they have achieved. And often those are potentially material things, they're awards, they're being Super Bowl champs, they're all those things. But again, that's temporary.
Mm-hmm.
How do you advise young athletes or even young kids today who are competing to think of themselves well beyond the person that achieves something, but somebody that can get better from the inside out every single day as a human being, separate and apart from what they quote unquote achieve?
Yeah. I mean, one, I hope my story lends as kind of a beacon for
Yeah.
people, not only just athletes, but people in general who are on that journey. But one of my favorite books is Finite and Infinite Games by James Carse. And it essentially it talks just about that. Our society is run by finite games. We need accomplishments, titles, and things like that to validate our importance. Otherwise, we don't know what makes somebody important or not. We don't know what gives somebody authority or not without a title. But
Mm-hmm.
when you start to look at life like an infinite game, one that the goal is not to end the game with a winner, the goal is to continue play.
Yeah.
Then it's about constant development and constant learning. That means that you can always, evolve. You can always adjust. You can always learn, and it takes you from having to be in that hyper competitive, life that tells you that the joy in life is only after the victory, but you don't control the victory in life
Mm-hmm.
most times.
Right.
An infinite mindset tells you that the joy in life is in the game,
Mm-hmm.
playing the game, the act of playing life, playing out that game. And that's really how I've changed my view on like accomplishments. I'm well decorated, but realistically, it's about, I see all of what I've done so far, my 13-year career, is more of just a process that I've been through that's
Yeah.
getting ready to set me up for this next phase of life. I've learned so much. And now it's not about like trying to hold on to all the relics and
Right.
trophies and rings. It's about, no, how do I take that and transition that into something new and bigger and better?
Yeah. Yeah. Speaking of moments, special moments, but in an infinite game that we're all in, you've had some defining moments. People have defining moments in their lives for sure. And you
Hmm.
shared some really powerful ones in your book, which is amazing, by the way. People need to pick it up. What Winners Won't Tell You. It's out now. Tell me this, where could your life have gone a different direction? Talk about this a little bit in the book. Can you share that?
Yeah, I talk about it. I mean, so many points that I look at my career or my life in general, and you can see a choice here or there that was defining. That if you made this wrong turn, could have changed it. One of them early on in life, one of my best friends got involved with gang life, and I was, trying to be right along with him. But lucky for me, I had a friend. He was a true friend who saw, where my life was going and the potential mine had, and was able to steer me away from it. And when I look, down the road between our lives and the different paths we took, it could have easily derailed, my own career, my life. And
Mm-hmm.
seeing as I've gone through sports, how many people have easily, made one bad choice and didn't get a second chance,
Mm-hmm.
ruined their opportunities. And so, even defining moments to me was getting cut or released from the Saints.
Mm-hmm.
That was one where I was a first round draft pick. I had given that team everything I had. I was the team captain. We had won a Super Bowl, and the season was over. My contract was up, and I never even got a call to say, "Hey, we're going in another direction." It was
Mm.
just over.
Yeah.
And that was one where I had to really take inventory on myself. Like, well, what do I want my legacy to be? What do I want? What is important to me? I can't
Mm-hmm.
give everything to this game because it's not reciprocal.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like, how do I continue to operate in my purpose, but make sure I'm setting it up larger than what's just on this field? Because you see how quick life can change. One decision, somebody else's decision can change everything. Um, and so it's important for people to, support each other. It's important for people to give second chances. I
Yeah.
write this so that people know that I'm, you don't see me as like somebody on a pedestal. You see me as like I'm in the same boat as the majority of these people. But
Yeah.
we all have a purpose. And the ironic thing about Calvin, who's my best friend from college, from high
Mm-hmm.
school, that we're talking about, is as crazy as that story was. When I look at where he is today, it was very much aligned with his purpose. Right now,
Mm.
he's specifically dealing with men and women who are coming out of incarceration and trying to get jobs. That is a very vulnerable
Sure.
community. Those people, the majority of them that violate, it'd be nonviolent offenses, but it affects how you get jobs, where you can live, where you go to school, all of these things. And now, because he's been rooted in that life and has gone through it himself, I'm watching him, operate in his purpose and getting people on track, which is the same thing he was doing even in high school. So it's ironic that, while
Wow.
we think that things may have, like, oh, his went wrong and mine went right, it really wasn't about wrong or right. It's these paths that ultimately, lead kind of to the same place. They're different journeys, but still allows he and I to be friends to this day and really think back on those times and laugh and look at how
Yeah.
different our paths were, but still stay true to his core.
Yeah, it's cool. I mean, it's cool to hear you say that that moment of being cut was actually a moment that allowed you to sort of reset, refocus, get clear.
Hmm.
And those moments are tough sometimes, but they do make us better for sure. Which is neat that that moment certainly did for you. You're an incredibly competitive guy. Where did that competitive drive come from inside of you? Where do you think that is anchored? Speaking of purpose, where'd that
Yeah.
come from?
Well, I think it comes from just the environment that I grew up in. I come from a household with three boys. I got two younger brothers, so we're always, competing and fighting. I had older cousins, a lot of boys in my family,
Yeah.
and then even my neighborhood. We would play football and any kind of sport from sun up to sundown. That's all we did was compete, 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 and trash talk. So it's like if you weren't good, you were having a bad summer. So that just really, carried on into, my life. It took that competitiveness, got me an opportunity to go play college football. That
Hmm.
competitiveness got me, to the NFL. I had never had plans of going to college or playing in the NFL, but just my desire to see where I stand against whoever else. I wanted to know where the best were, and I wanted to go against them to see where I was. I wasn't satisfied or interested in being like a big fish in a small pond. I wanted to see where I was amongst the best of the nation, and that's not just in football, but in any area that I dive into. If I put my if I put my time and my energy into developing a skill, I want to then see, okay, how does that skill stack up against people that I admire or other people, around the world. And I've had to move though from like that only got me so far, but until you get to the NFL and everybody's competitive, everybody's
Sure.
talented, and you realize that competition, it really thwarts creativity. And so competition drives you to hide information, to work alone, or consolidate, your thoughts and ideas. Where collaboration allows you to really scale, and that's where I've started to change too. Was it became about being less competitive. Of course, to my opponents, I'm going to be competitive, but when it
Sure.
came to building my team, the people around me, I had to learn the muscle of like cooperation and in a kind of this collective mindset, knowing that I don't have all the best ideas. I can't execute everything on my own. And so I need other people to poke holes in the ideas that I have. I need other people to sharpen my blade against. And I think there's always going to be a healthy balance of, a competitive environment, but you can't rely solely on competitiveness, because you'll be blinded. You won't have the ability
Yeah.
to create outside of your own mind. So there's definitely a balance in things that I've lost. Learned along the way, but I'm also one of those people that I don't let my kids win at anything. I don't let my mom or parents win. I'm not taking L's for anybody, but
That's right. No, no. I mean,
yeah.
I can only imagine a little monopoly over Thanksgiving.
Oh,
It's throwing
it's dangerous.
hands. I
That's
bet.
dangerous. Yeah.
I bet. I love it. Well, and where does curiosity play into this, right, Malcolm? I mean, when I always
Yeah.
think that curiosity creates chances, it creates choices.
Yes.
And it feels like that's something you've leaned into. You're not afraid to
Yeah.
fail. You step into things you don't know. Tell me a little bit about your view on curiosity and how
Yeah.
you tap into it every day.
Man, one of the things that my dad used to drill in my head, and I hated it as a kid, and it didn't really make sense till I got older, but he'd always say, "You don't know what you don't know."
Hmm.
And it's like, obviously,
Right.
right? But
Right. Thanks, Captain
but when
Obvious.
you yeah, right, but when you sit there and you really think about like, well, I don't know what I do. So there are things that I don't even know that I don't know. So it means that I have to constantly be open to learning new things. I have to always
Hmm.
leave room for human error and the fact that I don't know everything, which naturally
Hmm.
makes you ask why for everything.
Yeah.
Okay, well, this is this way, but why? And another person who I look up to that has that mentality is Kobe Bryant. Like he talks about being curious all the time.
Yeah, he
That
does. Yep. Yep.
watching the film from a game or watching the things, it's like, okay, the worst thing I used to hate when a coach would simply tell you like, you got to make that play. It's like, duh, right? Why didn't I make that play?
Right.
And then you start to, and that takes humility. That takes
Sure.
the ability to like, again, face your fears and take on those challenges head on and be honest with yourself. But when you do that, you grow. And in the minute that you grow, you realize that you don't make those mistakes no more. You
Hmm.
start to get better than everybody around you.
Yep.
And it just continues this cycle of learning and expanding. And that's really what life is. That's really my
Hmm.
purpose, is to continue to be curious about everything and
Yep.
see what sticks.
Yeah. I love it. You are also always dealing with change, right? As an athlete, change is constant, right? You're getting
Yeah.
healthy, you're getting released, you're getting trade. I mean, you're getting all these things. And sometimes that means changing positions, changing roles, which is something you
Hmm.
did a ton throughout your career, Malcolm. How were you able to excel inside of all of that? I sort of think adaptation is the new currency, right? As
Yeah.
opposed to efficiency per se. Get me
Hmm.
inside of that for you.
Yeah, one of the things that the coaches, when I was a young player in the league, coaches and players alike would say, the more you can do, the more valuable you are. And so the guy, you might be the best corner in the league, right? But if all you can do is play corner, the minute that you can't, the minute your skills start to diminish, you lose a little speed, you lose a little, youth, then you are of no use. But if you're a guy who can play 4 or 5 different positions on the field, then when people get hurt, as they always do, guess who? Guess who is
Yeah,
now
you're
more
tapping
valuable?
that guy.
Yeah, right. And all of a sudden, you're the one that's hard to get rid of, because to get rid of you, they got to bring in 2 or 3 people just to fill your role. And that is essentially kind of how I built my career. I embraced, changing things, and what you have to do. And it's like, I read The Laws of Power, one of my favorite ones. You have to reinvent yourself sometimes. It's like, okay, this is my new role. I changed positions. What does this position require? I'm playing safety now, not corner. That means I need to be tackling more. That means my body, I need to get stronger. Okay, that changes my entire, training regimen. You change teams. You start to think about the different dynamics on the team. I was on a team, my first year with Drew Brees, one of the most prolific leaders in
Sure.
our league history. And then I go to the Eagles that had Chip Kelly and didn't have captains at all. Like, that leadership structure was so different than the one I came from. But in order to succeed, you can sit and complain about it, or you can figure out a way to, evaluate the situation, assess yourself, your own skills and weaknesses, and figure out how you're going to play from that position, how you're going to play the cards that are dealt. And that's really something I live by and continue to do. And it creates that value where you
Yeah.
start to look at and you're like, yeah, you can't get rid of me because I
Yeah.
do all of these things. And at least if you do, I've set myself up to be valuable somewhere else.
Absolutely. I mean, that is, you're a utility guy at some level, to use a
Yeah,
baseball term, right?
right.
How much of that, like when you're inside of a moment of change, when it's coming at you, Malcolm, do you have a process by which you navigate those moments, a methodology of sorts? And I ask that only because I think it's incredibly important in those moments to shift fast, right? Like
Yeah.
you can stay in this place that isn't going to serve you, or you can make the change that needs to happen to show up the way you need to show up. Is there a process you go through, whether it's in business or in sports, that has helped you navigate change better?
I mean, the process is, like you said, the faster you do it, the better. So there really is no process. It's just one question that you need to ask yourself. Like, so now what? Like, okay,
Yeah.
so what? And then answer the question, because we like to get stuck in like these cycles of like complaining where we articulate beautifully. We analyze and see all of the things we don't like about the change, how the change might be problematic, how we might fail at the new change, and we can point out all of these things. And all we're waiting for is somebody to validate that we're afraid of where this might go. And the sooner you can get out of that cycle and focus on what the task is at hand, what is it that I need to do to put myself in the best position to succeed at this new role that I have no control over. Most of the time, change is out of our control. We can
Sure.
only focus on those things that we have the power to control. Otherwise, you're going to worry yourself to death. And
Sure.
that's really something I had to learn over my career. It wasn't always easy, but when I changed positions, that mindset changed literally in one sitting with Sean Payton. He changes my position from safety to corner, or corner to safety, and immediately all of the thoughts come in my mind. I start thinking about everybody who said I couldn't play corner in the league. I start thinking about, oh, I might be a bust. Or I'm thinking about, I don't even know how to really play the position like that. But then the other part has to look at like, well, this is also an opportunity to play. It's an
Yeah.
opportunity to get on the field. You don't know that you'll fail at this. So go hard at it until until you're proven wrong. Until you're
Right.
proven that you can't do it, don't shortchange yourself.
Sure.
And that's really where, that happened in that one meeting. By the time we got up, I said, okay, and my mind was made that, okay, this is something new, but I'm gonna go full speed at it and make this thing prove to me that I can't do it.
I love it. That's so good. And there was one point, I mean, in your 13 years, you had like an unreal sort of Iron Man streak, 133 straight games, I think. And I think it ended because of COVID, right? I mean, it wasn't even,
Yeah, right.
I mean, it's
Yeah.
unbelievable. What were the things that you were doing differently that kept you on the field? I mean, that is a
Yeah.
staggering streak at that level.
Well, Well, again, it's just constantly learning. One of the best things about playing under Chip Kelly, while from a what we were doing as a team on the field may not have been the greatest. What we were doing from a preparation standpoint was phenomenal. I was learning
Mm-hmm.
things about, my body that I never knew as an athlete, like rest and recovery, how my
Yeah.
diet affected everything. And as my role grew, right, I was responsible for more and more things. It got to the point where I couldn't get hurt. And I realized that my ability to be available was necessary for my team to win. And you
Mm-hmm.
start thinking about like, it's the idea of, when you're in an airplane and they say, hey, put your mask on first in order to
Mm-hmm.
help others. It's you have to, in football, be available first to be of any use to anyone. So whether
Mm-hmm.
that's your mental health and making sure that you're in the right mind frame to lead or to be a teammate, to be a father, to be a partner, like that's part of your responsibility is to take care of your mental. If it's your
Mm-hmm.
body, to be available, you have to take care of it to make sure that you can be available for the people you love, for the things you love to do. And so that meant, sleep. That meant changing the way I worked out. And obviously, I was extremely blessed and fortunate because every
Mm-hmm.
single person gets injured in football.
Sure.
And I had a really strong 8 seasons where with no injuries at all, not
It's
missing,
amazing.
anything. So I was definitely blessed, but it was a lot of hard work and a sense of responsibility to, my teammates and myself.
Yeah, no, no question. And you were a part of two Super Bowl wins, right? I mean, you winning
Yeah.
one with the Saints in 2010 over
Yep.
Manning, and then with the Eagles in
Yeah.
2018 over Brady, who, by the way, you
Yeah.
obviously you've rekindled that because he was the forward in the book, which is cool.
Yeah.
What separates championship teams from the rest?
To be honest, everybody usually thinks that there's like these splash plays that it's like this talent that's different that creates champions and not. But I really think it's process and what team can master the things that don't take talent the best. It's the
Mm-hmm.
fastest thing to level the playing field. If you have process, that means that you can not only be successful, because we say any given Sunday, right? That means
Yep.
that anybody can strike lightning and win any given game. The talent is that even. But to be consistent, you need process. And
Yep.
process is what you do week in, week out. You win games on Monday through Friday. You don't win them on Sundays. And that's in anything.
Yep.
So
Yep.
there's process, but then there's also, when it comes and you're in a talented, hyper competitive world, okay, then the things that don't take talent are all free to everyone, which means that you need to master them. So your attitude, your enthusiasm, your preparation, the knowledge of your responsibility, how you communicate, all
Yep.
of that stuff is free to anyone, and they're essential to being successful. It's only at like that very last, tip top of the mountain that talent actually takes over. And you can eliminate people who are more talented than you by just simply outworking them, out
Yep.
preparing them, having better energy and more enthusiasm by persevering. None of that stuff takes talent. But we
Mm-hmm.
sometimes leave all of that on the table because
Yep.
we're intimidated by somebody who has more knowledge than us or somebody who has a little bit more God given talent.
Mm-hmm.
And when you look at that across the team, the league or anywhere, consistent teams, if you study them, they all have process. The
Yep.
Patriots are probably the best example. They had the Patriot way. That's process. They never have the most talented roster, yet they
Mm-hmm.
compete with everybody because they do the very simple things. They understand like the basics of football. They understand alignment. They're detailed. They know the situations, and they can win over a long period of time.
Mm-hmm.
It's the same in business. It's the same in family and in anything. It's
Yep.
like if you
Yep.
have any kind of process that you can follow daily, and how to master the things that don't take talent, you'll go as far as you want to.
Yeah, I gave a TED talk that kind of went viral, Malcolm, about how it's not about talent, it's about drive, and it's about the drive to get better every day, to your point,
Mm-hmm.
right? Relative to attitude, mindset, all these things. And I think, as a parent myself, and it too, it always is so interesting to me when you see young kids out there and people talk about how talented they are. And the
Yeah.
data shows that actually impedes their growth, that it's better to talk about their effort, their mindset, their discipline, their consistency. Because if they rest on their talent, you saw it all the time, right? The guys that
Yeah,
were ridiculously talented and they never did anything because they just
right.
thought that was enough. And it's not. It's not even close to
Yeah,
enough.
the world is hyper competitive, and so if I see a talented person, I'm spending all off season thinking about how to eliminate
Yeah,
their talent. So
right.
if you're faster than me, okay, there's tactics. I can back up. We can double team you.
Mm-hmm,
I can
mm-hmm.
do things to take away your talent. And then if you haven't developed the latter part of your game, the ability to think critically, the ability to adjust, then you're a one trick pony, and you will get figured out, especially the higher you go and the more talented you are, or the competition gets, and eventually the talent gets eliminated, and now it's just about who's the smarter player, who's the more
Yep,
disciplined player, who gives the most effort consistently. And
yep, yep.
those things are like huge gaps. when
Yeah,
there when there's a disparity in those things, it's huge. You can
sure.
deal with gaps in talent by add a couple people here or there to your team, but when there's disparities in discipline and
Mm-hmm.
effort, it's night and day.
Yeah, it's over. What did you do? I mean, obviously, we have good days and bad days. We got good plays and tough plays. You got
Yeah.
businesses that you hit a home run on and then some that don't. What's your approach to recovering from adversity, from tough moments? What's your process around that?
I actually find it so much easier to respond to adversity than I do to success.
Wow.
I will create adversity for myself because
Wow.
I don't like being comfortable. So if I lose, I learn more from that film. I'm more motivated. I'm embarrassed. Now I'm watching every little detail. When you win, everybody's telling you you're great. You tend to maybe not look at everything as critically.
Mm-hmm.
You might have got away with some things and
Yep.
felt like it was your talent, and all of a sudden you get figured out. And so for
Mm-hmm.
me, I'm constantly looking for ways to create adversity, to create, that drive. And so for me, I'm very like determined. You
Sure.
have to be able to get over yourself though. There is a
Yeah.
humility thing where you can't be so embarrassed and so disappointed in your that you didn't meet your expectation that you can't move on from it. And that's what I see a lot of people dealing with, is that they can't forgive themselves for messing up.
Mm-hmm.
They can't
Mm-hmm.
forgive themselves for failing. They've created this illusion that the only option for them was success, and that's really not the case. We
Mm-hmm.
don't control the outcome. We only
Right.
control the process. And
Yep.
if I'm sticking to the process, then when I lose, my immediate thing is to go back to the process. I need to change my process. What do I
Mm-hmm.
need to work on this week or study? What do I need to learn about myself to get better? But if I'm looking at the results, then I immediately say, well, next week I'm going to do better. And
Mm-hmm.
the next week comes, and then your opponent does the same thing that the last one did.
Yeah. Yeah.
And,
Yeah.
because you're so focused on like the
Yeah.
kind of external, and you are the only. This is a single player game.
Yep.
Even though it's a team sport, life is, all of these people out here, we are playing a single player game in
Mm-hmm.
which our minds dictate how we experience the world. So if
Mm-hmm.
you want to stick and focus on, the bad, in the scary things, then that's what you'll manifest. But if
Yeah.
you look at these challenges as opportunities to get better, you look at perseverance, things that are hard as opportunities to learn something about yourself, all of a sudden, a loss is, you
Mm-hmm.
almost smile. There's been games where
Yeah.
I've lost
Yeah.
and I'm like, we needed that loss because that
Yeah. Oh,
loss
wow.
just told us that we were vulnerable. So now when we approach
Yeah.
every week, I know my team will be great. Like, I'm glad we lost that game.
Yeah.
And so,
That's
it's
awesome.
just one long, it's a long game. You're not focused so much in these moments. You know that you're just going to get up and continue to play.
Yeah, man. But that's craving feedback, which is because
Yes.
at your level as a player,
Yeah.
everybody's telling you you're amazing,
Yeah.
right? So it's an awesome opportunity to be able to get that film and look at it, break it down, and sort of go, no, and that's the difference, right? You
Yeah.
wanted to tinker every single practice in every game, and I think that's what the best do.
And that's how this book came to fruition.
Yeah.
Like, we were shopping it around, sending
Yep.
proposals out, and
Yeah.
we were getting, oh, this looks great, this is good. And
Yeah.
one editor said, he said, hey, he wanted to talk about it and kind of pull more out of me. But in my mind, all I heard was, this is trash. And I'm like,
Uh-huh.
I need him as an editor because I want
Oh,
somebody who's
wow.
willing to tell me, like, no, I need more out of you. Here's
Yeah,
what's wrong. I don't need yes men. Tell me,
right.
like, the way I'd even deal with businesses and ideas, I take my team and I say, tell me why this idea won't work. Because I don't need you to just tell me, yeah, that's a great idea, and I'll go run
Yeah,
outside and fall on my face. Tell me why this won't work. I'm not going to give up on the idea because you say it doesn't work, but I'm going to
sure.
go address all of these things. This is going to tell me how I need to make this idea work, and
Yeah.
that's really just how I've processed. I've learned that through obviously sports, but it's very useful when it comes to trying to develop yourself in any space. You need people who can tell you the truth about your performance, tell you the truth about where you are, and give you
Hmm.
advice to get you to, react and stretch yourself in certain ways.
Yeah, and it's cool because as a leader, you've created an environment where people feel safe giving you that feedback, which I
Yeah.
think is a nice little leadership nugget inside of what you just shared too, which is
Hmm.
making people feel safe to give you that tough feedback because that can be tough for people to do, but that's how we get better. I mean, that's what we all need. What do you think, Malcolm, when you think about your legacy on and off the field? And you said this word earlier. What are you most proud of?
Um, I'm most proud of the things that I've been a part of that were bigger than me.
Mm,
And having been a leader and kind of developing them. So when I look at like being I got to, I was more of a passenger of my first Super Bowl. I was a young guy, a rookie with the Saints, but to have been an integral part of like creating the culture in Philadelphia that went on to win a Super Bowl and bring that, be the only one in that city, like, and what that meant at that moment, and that for so many people, that to me is like, I'm super proud of that, to create the Players Coalition that
mm-hmm,
started, co-created. We started with about 12 of us, and now it represents over 12 sports leagues with athletes all around the country that are diving into social issues and being advocates for social change.
mm-hmm,
To be a part of setting that vehicle up is one, has had way more impact than what I could have ever done on my own. But to
mm-hmm.
be a part of the leadership of that and the vision of that has been something that I'm super proud of that. And
Yeah.
I recognize what the importance of providing vision is. For me, I had coaches and people at every major part of my life plant a vision in my head about myself that I didn't even see yet. And that's
Mm-hmm,
really a huge part of leadership is, can you get a world to see, can you get people to see a world that does not exist and be able to communicate it to them? Because once
mm-hmm,
you begin to do that, you change their minds about what's possible, you change their minds about what we're able to do.
mm-hmm.
And then the world changes. It's cool. I can do everything. I can do whatever on my own and
Sure.
be in my little hub. But all of the things that I've built and been a part of that are bigger than me, that have had lasting impact, that are still around even once I've stepped away from the game or moved away from
Mm-hmm.
the city, those are the things I'm most proud of.
I love it. You mentioned the Players Coalition, and you were obviously a huge part and are. What have been some of the biggest successes, Malcolm, of the Players Coalition, and where do you want to see it continue to grow?
Yeah, I think we look at like some of the work we were doing. Me in particular, we started to look at like how do we, especially politically, we were looking like, okay, how do we do things with the federal government and these big overarching things around the country? And you realize that's not how our country works. It
Mm-hmm.
actually works on a state and local level. You can have the most impact. Well, that's
Mm-hmm.
great because athletes are usually strongest in their market,
Sure,
right?
totally.
So now all I have to do is really focus on Philadelphia and Pennsylvania. It's like, oh, that's easy. And
Yeah, I got that,
we
man.
were lobbying for legislation that passed a Clean Slate Act where it got rid of nonviolent their police records or arrest records and things like that, criminal records for nonviolent offenders after 10 years of not having any violations. And
Mm-hmm.
we knew that would be significant because it affects how people are able to move throughout society. But we didn't realize that 1 in 3 people have in Pennsylvania had an arrest record or have some kind of criminal record. So that ended up helping millions of people, like getting their
Mm-hmm.
records expunged.
Mm-hmm.
We empowered other athletes. I was watching the Patriots and Devin McCourty and those guys lobby for legislation that got millions of dollars of funding put into schools for adequate computer labs and tech spaces. That stuff is, our
It's
communities
awesome.
need those. That stuff
Sure.
is huge. And then, like I said, when we scale that now to 12 different sports leagues, then what you're
Hmm.
saying is all of that work just grows exponentially. And
Hmm.
so to me, that's really the biggest thing about the coalition is we're not the solution, we're the vehicle. So any athlete out there who can look at their community and say, hey, I want to make a difference, they don't
Hmm.
have to do what I first did was create my own charity,
Hmm.
raise funds and build this
Right.
from the ground up. It's no, you can plug into this. We'll give you everything you need. We've got the funding, we've got the expertise. We can get you educated so you can speak candidly. We give you options. You want to write an op-ed, you want to do a
Hmm.
community event, you want to lobby, you can do anything based off of your own, level of engagement. And that's really what's needed.
Yeah,
Because
that's
we see
awesome.
the potential there for athletes to have a huge difference in this world,
Hmm.
especially when it's happening collectively.
Yeah, no question. It's awesome. That's legacy, right? When we think
Mm-hmm.
about legacy. Malcolm, from the outside looking in, I mean, the world sees, and I see this relentless football player who's mentally tough, who's focused, who's clear on his purpose, who's diverse in his success on and off the field. But in the book, you talk a little bit about some real personal struggles with some mental health stuff, and you opened up a little bit about it in the book. Can you kind of talk to me, take me to that place, and how you got to that place in your life, and then how you were able to emerge from it so strong?
Yeah, I think, one thing that when you're a leader and you're dealing with all of these things, I got really good at compartmentalizing, my
Mm-hmm.
life. So I was going to be where my feet were at all times. If I'm at home, I could be focused at home. If I'm practicing, I'm thinking about is being on the field.
Mm-hmm.
Um, But when it comes to like your emotional well-being, your mental well-being, sometimes that's not good, especially when you're balancing as much as I was at particular parts of my life. And it just piled up to the point where I started dealing with I've always been a little bit anxious, but
Mm-hmm.
my anxiety got to the point where all I could think about was stopping the anxiety.
Mm-hmm.
And that scared me. And I think in that fear, I could have tried to compartmentalize it again, but I took a chance. And this is probably one of the hardest things for me to do as an individual in general is to ask for help. And
Mm-hmm.
I did. I reached out to one of our sports psychologists that had worked with the worked with the Eagles a few years prior. Um, and she's been my therapist for going on like 6 years now.
Wow.
And I just realized that that was another part of me that I needed to develop. If I was
Mm-hmm.
going to be the leader to, balance all of these things, I was going to lead my team, lead my family, lead my community, lead these businesses, that I
Mm-hmm.
needed to make sure that I was equipped to do that. It's the same as
Mm-hmm.
changing the position. It's like, okay, well, your body needs to change as well.
Mm-hmm.
And that was something that we don't talk about much in sports. We don't talk about much in, with Black men. It's
Mm-hmm.
just taking care of your, psychological and emotional needs and well-being.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, I think we live in a world too where the level of demand on people at every level almost now is exceeding their capacity.
Yeah.
And at time, over time and at scale, that can create a lot of anxiety for a lot of
Hmm.
people. How did get me inside of a little bit of how she got you to sort of pivot from a moment that you talk about in the book where I just want it to go away, whatever that might look
Hmm.
like,
Yeah.
meaning I don't maybe want to be here anymore, so
Right.
that maybe it will go away. How did she take you from that place, give you the tools, right? I'm thinking about a listener, right, who's thinking, I got a lot coming at me. I'm overwhelmed. I have
Hmm.
anxiety, right? Somebody that's thinking, what are the two or three things that you would say, hey, here's some things that she told me that really helped me shift?
Yeah. The first was breathing. Like
Mm,
literally she'd just say, hey, if you could steal 5 minutes to just breathe every day, deep
mm-hmm,
breathing, where you're all you're thinking about is counting your breaths, that changes, your entire body and the way you feel. And I
mm-hmm,
started to do that. And over time, I've really, like, I'm to a point now where the days that I don't start with a meditation are
Wow.
usually chaotic. Like,
Wow.
meditation is important for me just to be able to ground myself in real things, because my mind will play tricks on you. It'll make you think
Hmm.
that everything is, this is the worst thing possible. That anxiety makes you feel like, everything's going crazy. But anxiety is really, this was the second part, was framework, like how you frame things
Hmm.
changes how you look at them.
Yeah.
Anxiety will make you think that it's usually you're worried about the future or ashamed of the past or some
Yeah.
variation of that. But it's, you usually don't get anxiety in the moment when you really stick yourself in where you are. And so a lot of the times it would just be about, I would lay out all of these things that are wrong or going on. And she asks one question: how much of that is in your control?
Hmm.
And you realize this long list of things that you laid on the table is usually like one or
Yeah,
two that
exactly.
you actually can
Sure.
influence. So
Totally.
it's like, yeah, don't worry about the things that you can't control. Focus on what you actually have the ability to affect. And usually that's only you. Right.
Yeah.
So okay, I decide what's important. If I'm feeling anxious, then okay, maybe I need to prioritize getting some rest. Maybe I can
Hmm.
put this down and rest for tomorrow, go breathe or meditate. And then you
Hmm.
start to just develop different habits. And once you create habits, then it just becomes part of who you are, and you naturally, begin to be able to adjust to the ebbs and flows of life. But it really comes down to, the personal awareness that, hey, in this moment, I'm framing this wrong, and I need to
Hmm.
just focus on what I can control. Then when you start focusing on what you can control, you start doing things different, and you can change your habits. So it's, that if for any listener, it's like, start there. Take a deep breath.
Yeah.
Think
Yeah.
about think about what's going on. Ask yourself what is in your control. And I
Hmm.
guarantee, whatever those small one or two things are, focus on that, and
Yeah.
attack that. And it'll make things different for you over time.
Well, I mean, I tell you what, if you've ever tried to control something you can't control, you want to talk about getting exhausted fast,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
It'll do it, right? It'll do it. So, my husband and I have three daughters. I know you are the proud father of two girls.
Mhm.
What do you want most for them?
I want them to live a life, that is not inhibited by fear, uh, yeah, by the fear of failure or
Hmm.
the fear of, you know, comparing themselves to anybody else. I want them to try everything. I want them to be curious. I want them to embrace, you know, failure and embrace losing, embrace, because that's only going to make them winners. It's going to make them try new things. It's going to make them grow. Um, those are really the things I try to instill. I feel like if everything else will take care of itself, if they are
Yeah,
not afraid to take chances and they
yeah,
understand, who they are.
yeah. I love it. I asked my mom that question when my daughters were 2, 2, and 3. We had three kids in 12 and a half months, Malcolm. That's another story. But I asked her, and she said confidence, which to me is also another powerful word I might throw your way too with your girls. I mean,
Yeah,
it's just a powerful thing, particularly in the
I
world
use
that
that word a lot.
do you
We
with your
we one
girls.
yeah, one of the things we do when I drive them to school is, and I got this from watching videos of Nipsey Hussle. He
Uh-huh.
talked about going through this routine with his daughters where he's throw all these words because this is what he wants them to know was important to him. And so for me,
Yeah.
what I ask them is, we talk about confidence. Like, do you know what confidence is? It's believing in yourself. Okay, are you confident? Yes. It's like, okay, what is love? It's like, will you treat other people
Wow.
like you treat yourself? Okay, do you have love? Are you loved? Yes.
Wow.
Okay, what is integrity? What do you do when people aren't watching? Okay, do you have integrity? Yes. And so we go through this list of qualities that I want them to understand the importance of. And it might be, a little bit
Hmm.
routine and kind of like, Dad, what are you doing now? But when they get older, those are the things that they'll remember. The things I remember, my dad saying, "You don't know what you don't know." He said that to me 1,000 times, and I never
Yeah.
wanted to hear it. But that's
Hmm.
out of all of the things that have stuck, that
Yeah.
has, right.
Yeah.
So it's one of those things where you got to make yourself a broken record sometimes,
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
and hope it
Well,
sticks.
I have a feeling those girls one day are going to have some kids in the back seat of their car and they're going to talk about Papa Jenkins who told them what is integrity, right? I love it. I love it.
Right.
So we end with rapid fire. You've been incredibly generous with your time, so I want to fire a couple quick ones off, and you just tell me what comes up. You ready?
All right.
Favorite personal possession?
Hmm. My favorite personal possession. That. Oh, okay. Um, I would say it is I got a piece of art from an artist named Kahari Turner,
Mm,
and I've been collecting art for probably about a year and a half. But
mm-hmm.
that piece is kind of like the centerpiece of my collection. That, and it's a tie between that and I got an Ernie Barnes, and Ernie Barnes is my favorite artist of all time. One, because
Wow.
he's I grew up seeing his images everywhere. He did the album cover for Marvin Gaye's album back in the day, but he also played in NFL. So he's like, there's this connection
Wow.
there, and I
Yeah.
literally this year just was able to acquire one of his pieces. So those two artworks are probably my most prized possessions.
Well, and I knew you were digging art. That was why I asked that. I certainly wasn't expecting you to name a fancy car, expensive watch, by the way.
Right.
So, what's one thing on your bucket list?
Um, I don't have a bucket list. My goal is, I don't want any dreams deferred, and that's what the
Mm,
bucket list kind of represents
okay.
to me is the things I'm
Interesting.
willing to put aside, and
Nice.
I'm in a place where if I want to go somewhere, I want to do something, then I'm going to set my mind to it. That's what I'm going
Love
to
it.
do. Life's too short.
Love it, man. That's a good
Yeah.
one. I love that. So, all right, it's a little early, but what's your way too early Super Bowl prediction?
My way too early.
I know it's early, man.
Yeah, I'm gonna go. I'm not, because I'm saying it's way too early. I'm not gonna put the Eagles in there. I would say way too early would be San Francisco. They're off to a hot start
Hmm.
against the Dolphins. I think it's way too early, to make the Dolphins are
I just had
looking
Mike
great.
McDaniel on. I just had McDaniel on the other day. We're releasing it here in a minute. But yeah, no, what a
Yeah,
guy. Jeez.
yeah. I mean, hey,
He looks like an accountant, not a football coach, right?
right, exactly. Hey, something's working though. You know something.
Exactly. So the
Yeah.
show's called Game Changer. So really, really quick last question. Who's a game changer or what is a game changer? Who inspires you and why?
Right now, one of the people I'm drawing a lot of inspiration from is Michael Bennett. I talk about
Mm,
him in the book. What Winners Won't Tell You.
yep.
As a teammate, he was only my teammate for 1 year, and I learned so much with him through conversation. He's somebody that's written the book already. Like while he was playing,
Yeah.
he's the one who got me into traveling to Africa and things like that. And now he's a full blown artist. Like he's doing art installations, alongside of some of the artists I'm trying to collect. And so just watching his journey as a man, as a
Mm,
father, the husband he is, and then like leaving the game and not going to ESPN or coaching
hmm.
and things like that, fully about facing and walking in a whole nother direction and going to that white belt mentality. I think he was
Hmm.
in like Japan or something, learning, going to school for architecture, and now he's turning that knowledge into full blown art installations. It's phenomenal, and his philosophy around the importance of space, creating
Hmm.
safe spaces, but also useful spaces. This idea of new and old coming together, what he's doing is very inspiring to me. Somebody who's now on the precipice of walking into that void of the unknown on my
Hmm.
own, walking away from the game and wondering, can I be
Hmm.
successful in these other places outside of sports? And he's, been one of those guiding lights for me.
What a blessing. And you know him too, which is
Hmm.
what a gift. That's awesome. Malcolm, this was super fun. Thanks for taking time.
Thank you for having me.